Hello, hello, hello. Hey everyone. Sorry I can't be there today. Thank you for having me. I guess none of you all are there today, right? Because like the office is closed and stuff. But thank you for having me anyway. I really miss London. I had such a great time when I came out there in August. Also spoke at React Native London back then. That was a really great opportunity to meet all of you, and we had a really good time afterwards. And I generally just miss it. So sad that I can't be there today, but super happy that thanks to technology we can make this happen. And also thanks to taping my phone to the screen to make this recording higher quality. That's something that you can't see, but I'm throwing it out there. Anyway, today we'll be talking about unifying React Native across all platforms. Uh, Potentially a controversial topic, full of exciting information. We're going to talk about a little bit of Expo, a little bit of React Native, a little bit of Microsoft stuff, and a little bit of Reason, which I particularly always admire. Anyway, if you haven't heard of me, my name is Peter Pekarczyk. This is the photo that I used to use, and I still do, back when I had a beard. When I came to visit all of you, I did have a beard, but now I'm just sort of doing this like clean shaven, COVID-19 pandemic, locked in my house look. Uh, Going back to the topic, my last name is pronounced pies, cars, and chicks, right? It comes up all the time. How do you pronounce your last name? Pies, cars, and chicks. That's a lot easier, right? I'm the co-founder and CTO of Draftbit, which I'll talk about in a second. I'm a Y Combinator alum, W18, Winter 18 batch. We started as Orchard and ended up pivoting to Draftbit, so crazy to think about it. It's been almost 2 years. I created Apollo query components via Apollo Toad a couple of years ago. So if you use query components, I played somewhat of a role in that. I'm Expo's first user, believe it or not. I love Reason and Reason React. I host the conference in Chicago, and I help contribute. And I also maintain and contribute a few popular JavaScript libraries that you may or may not have heard of. Anyway, so if you haven't heard of Draftbit, we help teams build mobile apps. The mobile apps that people build are really cool. And the mobile apps that we also build can be run as PWAs directly in the browser, right? So it's pretty cool. We just launched this new website on Webflow. Check it out if you haven't. It's actually really cool. We got all these like animations, kind of goes over, bringing your screens to life, all that marketing jazz that, that gets you excited. Anyway, I'm pretty proud of it because we just launched it. The source code that we generate for your apps is pretty high quality, right? So this whole like low code, no code thing is becoming pretty popular. But the difference between us and a lot of our competitors is that we still give you access to your source code. And that's a huge deal, right? A lot of the times these services are using templates or some form of that behind the scenes and just like plug and play your data. And that's great. But, for a tool as powerful as ours, we want you to be able to pass that off to, a different team or eject and work on whatever else you weren't capable of doing without having to throw out your source code. So we strive for making that source code super high quality. Now, I was watching my talk from August, and I just sort of stumbled over a screenshot of what the builder looked like back then, right? And this is about 2019, right? This toy that we had, right? Now I took a screenshot of what that looks like today. Check this out, right? Not only did we update the theme for whatever reason, but we are now a power tool, right? We went from being just a toy to a powerful power tool, right? This web preview works a lot better. We render fonts, we render your assets. You've got the ability to set any sort of prop from the React Native side directly in Draftbit. That's pretty powerful. Folks have been able to build their apps like from a sketch designer or whatever in a matter of hours. Yes, believe it, it's true. It's nuts. But anyway, enough about that selling pitch. Why am I here today? Well, so currently Draftbit targets 2 platforms, right? The web via PWAs, right, and then mobile, iOS and Android. We use the same API, but why can't we pursue other platforms? Well, we're not there yet. This is something that I'm personally just, looking into. I don't know much about it. I don't know what our users think of it, but I have discovered some really cool things that have come out in 2020, and I'd love to share those with you all today. The internet obviously has a lot of ideas too. So what you'll see is just sort of a collection of different things that folks are doing, and I'm going to try to keep things as objective as possible. But it gives you an idea of like some paths that you can pursue, right? So now, when it comes to building layouts, Draftbit supports everything under the sun, right? You can build your entire layout really, really quickly. So what's stopping us from turning this on? Well, we could, right? There is arguably nothing stopping you from building your Apple TV app inside Draftbit, but the reality is that nobody's asked for it yet, so it doesn't matter, right? Also, like a big proportion of that too, and a big portion of like all of the problem behind this is that even though the primitives are the same, there are a lot of nuances between different platforms, obviously, right? We're used to specific experiences on iOS, on Android, on our Apple TV, our Xbox, our PlayStation, etc., right? So even though we might apply the same like declarative ideas, right, it doesn't necessarily play out the same way in practice, right? We like to keep our experiences the same. Now, the world has done a really good job of unifying iOS and Android so far, right? Sometimes we like to go down the specific, like I'm going to use Material UI because I'm building an Android app, or I'm going to use Hig because I'm building a iOS app. But there have been some really nice apps that were designed that work cross-platform, right? Now we're sort of entering this new phase where can we get that working on the web? Can we get that working on the desktop, right? We'll talk about a little more of that. Every once in a while, we hear this phrase like write once, run everywhere, right? You've heard like write once, use everywhere too, and that's sort of a derivative of this, right? And this is sort of a dream that we haven't realized, but may eventually realize. I've seen some clever techniques to make this happen, but we're far from, doing this in production. Very far from it, right? It's still, the reality is possible, we're just a couple of years away. And things that make this problem really, really hard are obviously different screen sizes, right? Stark difference between an iPhone and the Apple TV, right? That's like I have a 60-inch TV at home, right? And my Apple's like 6 inches. My iPhone is 6 inches. Different interactions, right? I interact with my phone with my finger by touching things and swiping. I use my web browser by using my mouse pad or just a normal mouse and scrolling, right? Or even your keyboard. My Xbox is a controller, right? Which is much different than either a mouse pad, keyboard, or swipe and touch, right? And then lastly, like I mentioned earlier, the different user experiences, right? I'm used to a certain experience on my Android machine. I'm used to a certain experience on Windows, and I'm used to a certain experience on iOS, right? The easiest example that I could come up with, like the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this problem, is the date picker, right? We have different date and time pickers across Android and iOS. For whatever reason, opinions are always different. One could be better than the other. So on Android, we have this thing that sort of pops up, right? It's got the Material UI theme, right? And then that's what you use. On iOS, you have this inline date and time picker, right? It doesn't show up in a modal or a pop-up, right? It's inline. You can place it anywhere. So when React Native was first coming out, we had two separate and stark, vastly different APIs, right? The Android date picker was imperative, right? You would have to call a function that would then open it up, and the experience would be completely controlled, right? And then you get your date and time, you'd be done. On iOS, the date time picker was a component, right? A declarative component that would take a visible prop that would either show or hide. And then you have your on-change handler, right? So you'd have to manage the space of where that goes, as well as any type of pop-up if you wanted it there, right? Otherwise, it would just show up inline. Good and bad on both sides, right? But the community has made that easier, right? A great case study of how we can head towards the direction of cross-platform success is by unifying these experiences, right? The React Native community is fantastic. If you haven't seen it on GitHub, it's really nice, right? They offer a lot of different packages. Here, let me open this up. They offer a lot of different packages that will come in handy, right? The datetime picker is one of them. Another really popular one that they have is Bob, right? Bob was a tool written by Satya that makes the process of scaffolding and building React Native apps, whether they're specifically to their native platforms or the web, right? They make it easy to build React Native libraries, right? No more handling of TypeScript or whatever that you need to do, or Babel or Flow. It just does it for you, right? The same way that, Microbundle or TSDX would do, right? When it comes to React Native community, there's also some exciting repos. Like if you've seen what's been going on in the React Native world lately, right, of making core smaller, a lot of those components are ending up here, right? Video, async storage, the datetime picture, the camera, the web view, etc., right? So if you're looking for a place with really high quality components for React Native, definitely check out React Native community. Now, on the other end of that, Reason is also making this easier, right? If you haven't heard of Reason, Reason is this language that lets you write simple and type safe and very, very fast JavaScript-looking code. So it's got a JavaScript-like syntax with that's powered by the OCaml API, right? And so you can use Reason for a variety of different things. For web, for native, right? It compiles down to bytecode, right? Which means forget the JavaScript layer altogether. Give me a small bundle, and I'll talk about that in a second. There's also Reason React, right? So Reason was actually created by the creator of React, fun fact, right? And Reason React, the pitch there is a safer, simpler way to build React components, right? You get a great type system with an even better developer experience, right? And you can watch the video of Jordan Walk, the creator of React. Fun fact, the first talk that Jordan gave since releasing React in 2013. It's pretty cool. Anyway, so now a little bit about why Reason is making this easier, right? Like, how is this all coming together, Peter? Well, there's this tool called Reverie UI, right? And what Reverie UI is a library written in native Reason that compiles to the web and native desktop apps, right? Targeting Linux, Windows, and Mac OS with one code base. You can go across all those. React Native, iOS, Android derivative is in the works, right? But right now it's only that. So I've got this GIF right here, and as you can see, it's a little laggy, but that's not what it's like, right? This is the smooth animations running directly in the browser. They've got a lot of great examples too. Hover, calculator, whatever. They take a second to compile. It's definitely worth checking out. Ken Wheeler built this app called CamelSynth. I actually downloaded it, and it's blazingly fast. Like, did you see that? It opens up instantly, right? The nice thing about these apps is they're super small and they're very light on memory. An example of what that looks like is Jared Forsyth's Qmoji app, right? So we've all used the emoji data picker, or I think we have, or not just the emoji picker, right? I think it's Command Control Space or whatever it is, and you get the emoji picker. Well, he decided to rebuild that in Reason to see like what it's capable of, and he compared it against. There was a different version of it called Moji Bar, right? Moji Bar is an Electron app. Qmoji is a Reason app, right? Same exact style of code, right? Same exact functions. All it does is show you all the emojis and the ability to search for those. And it's quite snappy. It's very fast, and it works as a menu bar app. And then lastly, in terms of like cross-platform stuff, there's Onivim, right? And that's a text editor. It's written in Reason, powered by libvim, which is Vim under the hood, and it supports all of the VS Code language servers and extensions, right? So you get this really, really fast text editor that opens up immediately, right? That uses your favorite VS Code extensions. Definitely worth checking out. They're in an alpha. It's a paid product. It's $35, but I strongly recommend you taking a look. It's totally worth it. It's super fast. I love it. So how does all this compare to Electron, right? Before we get too far ahead, right, we're talking about like a completely different language that does a lot of different things that gives us some exciting results, right? So Electron apps are written in JavaScript, and what they do is they bundle up the entire Node engine, V8, right, which is a minimum of 120 megabytes. That means that if you wanted to build a simple Hello World app in Electron, the app would be at least 120 megabytes. Qmoji, on the other hand, right, which doesn't use Electron, is a measly 3.4 megabytes, right? And then it uses half the memory of Moji Bar 2. That's pretty exciting, right? It's also worth pointing out that Electron apps don't mean React Native, right? They mean any type of JavaScript. For example, Atom and VS Code are written using Electron, but they don't use React, and that's okay. So when you want to compare Reverie and Reason to Electron, well, what they do is they compile to native bytecode. Your apps are small and fast, and they just work, right? There's no JavaScript layer that it needs to talk to. It strips all of that out while retaining the same structure. Oh, before I get too far ahead, I had this open. This is the website for Onivim. It's onivim.io. It's $35. It's really, really cool. They've got the public roadmap, right? It's actually someone from, I think the Microsoft TypeScript team. Don't quote me on that, but they switched over to using Reason and Reverie and built this amazing infrastructure for an editor. Anyway, so now moving on. What are our other options, right? So there's React Native Windows and Mac OS, right? So there's React Native Windows and then there's React Native Mac OS. And those do exactly what you think them to do, right? Interestingly enough, when I was working on this presentation, Microsoft just like unveiled an overhaul of React Native Windows, which is pretty cool. And what you can do, if it's not already obvious, use the React Native primitives to build desktop apps for Mac OS and Windows. There's still that JavaScript layer, right? That still lives there. But the nice part is the same exact primitives that you're used to apply to desktop apps. Now, I'm not a Windows person, but I know some of you are, right? You might be wondering, how is this different than a universal Windows platform? Well, the same way that React Native uses iOS and Android native components under the hood, React Native Windows uses Universal Windows Platform Components, UWP, under their hood, right? So the same idea, same characters with the bridge, but they just talk to different components under the hood, right? So it's a really cool and exciting project you should check out, especially if you want to build a Mac OS app. I've always wanted to do that, but obviously timing is rough. So maybe what I'll do is I'll take Draftbit, try to compile it to that using those primitives. Who knows? Okay, so another really cool demo that I've seen lately is Crossy Road. And what is Crossy Road? Crossy Road is an example of a game written using Expo Web, right? So maybe you've played this before, right? There's an Apple TV app for it. It's really cool. Check out those animations. Check out how smooth that is, right? So this works for native mobile or native iOS and Android, right? And it also works on the web with one code base, right? And that's because Expo has recently introduced support for PWAs, right? That means same code base, same APIs that work really nicely across different platforms, right? And the nice part about this is that they do a very good job of gracefully degrading the experience for APIs that don't exist on the web, right? We all know what the web is like, and we all know that native Android and iOS have better things like permissions and gyroscope and all these different things that we can't use on the web, right? And they do a very good job of making sure that your app doesn't crash, right? But you still get to use the same API. And how that works is Expo Web uses React Native Web, right? React Native Web is a library. Let's open this up. React Native Web is a library developed by Nicholas at Twitter, and what it does is it takes the React Native primitives and makes them work in the browser, right? And Twitter is a great example of a PWA. I have powered by, it's actually powered by React Native Web, right? It was actually pioneered at Twitter. So if you go to twitter.com on your browser or on your mobile phone, what it does is it opens up a PWA. It basically syncs and caches the app layer and then only fetches the data, right? So if you turn off your internet connection right now, Twitter would still be usable, right? You wouldn't get any new stuff, but it's not like that typical experience where everything just sort of fails, right? So it's one of the ways that we at Draftbit power our builder, right? We give you the live preview, center screen of what's going on in the web browser and also on your mobile phone. And we use some of that to power our own stuff. Okay, now Expo HTML elements was recently released, right? So what this is a component library that lets you use HTML elements like block quote and heading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and blink and footer and all the HTML elements that you've heard of as React Native components, right? So you might be wondering, like, wow, another library, like, what do I do with this, right? Well, the nice thing about Expo HTML elements is that they will help you optimize your SEO and accessibility, right? Because they use the same primitives that the web offers, right? They compile and degrade nicely across native and iOS too. So here's an example of what that looks like. So you've got on the left-hand side snack.expo.io open, right, which is like a website, and you've got the phone running on the right-hand side, right? So it does this really nice job of putting together the header, the footer, the main title, article section, right? Like all just like native components. And so on the left-hand side is the HTML web experience, right? And so what Evan at Expo's done is apply that same concept to mobile, right? That's really, really cool. So if you want to know the differences between React Native Web and HTML elements, is like they're sort of reverse. So React Native Web brings view, text, image, and all those fun things to the browser, right? And HTML elements bring things like aside, an article, bold to native, right? Another really cool thing that Expo's done recently is universal authentication flows. And what this means is that you can write the same API for logging into Twitter, logging into GitHub, logging into whatever service that you want directly from using the same exact code base, right? And that's super, super cool. The docs are super well put together. As you can see here, I was like scrolling for a specific thing, can't find it, but oh, here it is, right? So they offer everything from Coinbase, Apple, Facebook, Spotify, Slack, GitHub, Dropbox, Identity 4, Uber, Reddit, Okta, Google. The list goes on, right? And now that experience will work on the web and on mobile, right? Awesome. That's what I have to share for today. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/PeterPME. Same with GitHub, PeterPME, all the way across the board. And if you're interested, check out Draftbit. Despite everything going on in the world, Draftbit is still hiring. If you're interested in the space, if you're into visual programming, right, I still consider that programming. Whether or not you're typing code or doing something, there's still this whole thought process behind it, right? So please reach out. We're hiring. And hopefully folks like this idea with Notion. So I wanted to try something different. Hopefully you all didn't hate me for it. But I put together my presentation in Notion. I figured since we're all virtual, right, it might be a little easier for me for doing demos and embedding things. So I'm sure I'll see in the YouTube comments whether you like it or not. You know, it's easily, you can thumbs down it or, you know, tweet something really bad or whatever. But I'll know. And that way I'll know never to do it again. Anyway, I'm going to share this link with all of you. There's plenty to learn from here. I'll put a lot of links in here for Reason React, Reverie, React Native Web, React Native Windows, Crossy Road, Onivim, even the React Native TV OS, which I didn't talk about. But anyway, thank you so much again for having me. I can't wait to see everybody in person once this is all over. Until then, see you later. Thank you.